He stood outside the small restaurant for a long moment before walking in. The glass door was smudged with fingerprints and old grease marks. Inside, the place smelled of fried food, warm bread, and strong tea. It was not the kind of place someone like him would ever visit. At least not the man the world thought he was. In the outside world, he owned tall buildings, busy companies, and quiet power. People smiled before he spoke. They laughed too quickly. They agreed even when they did not understand. Everywhere he went, doors opened before he touched them. Yet none of it felt real anymore. That was why he was here now. Wearing a faded jacket, loose shoes, and a cap pulled low. No guards, no assistants, no signs of wealth, just another tired man walking in from the street. The bell above the door rang softly. A few people looked up for half a second, then turned back to their meals. Their eyes slid past him as if he did not matter. He noticed that right away. When he was rich, people stared. Now they barely saw him. He chose a small table near the corner. The chair wobbled when he sat down. He placed his hands on the table and waited. No one came. Minutes passed. People who came in after him were served first. He did not complain. He was here to watch, to feel, to remember what life was like when money did not speak for him. His thoughts drifted back to his younger days. Before success, before long nights in glass offices, back when he used to count coins before buying food. He had promised himself back then that if he ever became powerful, he would stay human. Somewhere along the way, that promise got lost. A voice finally broke his thoughts. "What would you like?" He looked up. The waitress stood there holding a small notepad. Her hair was tied back neatly. Her face showed signs of long hours, but her eyes were calm. She did not rush him or look annoyed. "Just tea," he said. Quietly she nodded and gave a small smile. Nothing forced, nothing fake. Then she walked away. That simple moment stayed with him. No special treatment. No cold look either. Just normal. As he waited, he listened to the room. A group of workers laughed loudly near the window. An older man ate alone, staring at his phone. A couple argued softly over money. Life happened all around him without caring who he was. The tea arrived steaming hot. The waitress placed it carefully in front of him. "Let me know if you need anything else," she said. He thanked her. She moved on. At another table, a well-dressed man snapped his fingers to call her. She rushed over. The man complained about the food and spoke sharply. She apologized even though it was clear the mistake was not hers. The billionaire watched closely. He saw how she lowered her eyes slightly, not in shame, but to keep peace. He had seen this before. People with power using it for no reason. The man felt a strange tightness in his chest. He took a slow sip of tea. It tasted plain but comforting. Something about the place felt honest. Nothing was polished. Nothing was pretending. A few minutes later, the manager came out, a loud voice with quick steps. He walked past the billionaire without looking at him. When he reached the loud table, he smiled wide and bowed his head. That difference did not go unnoticed. The billionaire leaned back and studied the room. He noticed how the waitress moved quickly, yet carefully. How she checked on older customers first. How she cleaned a spill without being asked. No one praised her. No one thanked her. Then something happened. A young customer bumped into the billionaire as he passed by. The cup rattled. A bit of tea spilled onto the table. "Watch it," the customer snapped. The billionaire said nothing. He wiped the table with a napkin. "What are you even doing here?" the man added, looking at his worn clothes. A few people chuckled. The billionaire felt the old anger rise, the kind he used to feel long ago. But he stayed quiet. The waitress saw it from across the room. She walked over quickly. "It was an accident," she said firmly. The man scoffed and waved his hand. "Mind your work, Shear," did not step back. "Please lower your voice," she said. He did nothing wrong. The room went quiet for a second. The customer looked surprised. No one usually spoke back to him. The manager rushed over. "What is going on here?" "Nothing," the waitress said calmly. "Just an accident." The manager looked at the billionaire, then frowned. Please be careful next time, he said coldly to the billionaire, then turned to the customer with a smile. Waitress bit her lip but said nothing more. She looked at the billionaire for a moment. Are you okay? She asked softly. He nodded. Words felt heavy in his throat. That small act stayed with him. She had nothing to gain, only trouble. Yet she chose to speak. He finished his tea slowly. For the first time in years, he did not feel rushed, did not feel watched. When the waitress came back with the bill, she placed it gently on the table. No, hurry, she said. He thanked her again. Their eyes met briefly. Something unspoken passed between them. As he reached into his pocket, he felt the weight of what he was about to do in the coming days. This place, this woman, this moment, none of it was part of his plan. Yet it felt more important than any meeting waiting for him outside. He paid quietly and stood up. Before leaving, he looked around once more. No one noticed except her. She gave him a small nod as if wishing him well. He walked out into the street, feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. The disguise had worked, but the truth he was facing was harder than expected, and this was only the beginning. The next day he returned. He wore another set of worn clothes, different shoes, but the same low cap. The restaurant looked just as it had the day before. Customers came and went. Laughter, arguments, and the smell of fried food filled the air. Everything seemed normal, yet he felt different. Yesterday had left a mark on him, quiet curiosity about the people who live their lives without wealth to protect them. He took the same corner table. The chair squeaked under his weight. A group of workers laughed at the counter, teasing each other about an argument that had ended the day before. The manager moved quickly, making sure the kitchen ran without trouble. The man observed all this with careful attention, taking mental notes. He had watched the world from above for so long, commanding it with a signature and a nod. Now he watched from below, learning something entirely new. The waitress arrived with a smile. She did not recognize him. Of course, he looked different to her, but she did not treat him as someone less or someone special. He noticed how she moved, calm and efficient, attending to every customer with patience and respect. She carried multiple plates, refilled glasses, and listened attentively to complaints. Nothing annoyed her. Nothing made her rush. Everything she did was measured, thoughtful. A man at a nearby table complained loudly about a meal. The manager approached, frowning, and apologized, even though it was clearly the customer's fault. The waitress interjected gently, explaining the situation to the customer. She did not take sides, but she made sure the man knew he was heard. The billionaire could feel a pang in his chest. He realized he had not seen this kind of grace in years. People often acted out of fear or expectation. But her behavior came from something else entirely. Kindness. Integrity. He decided to test her quietly. A new customer arrived, older and clearly tired. The man dropped some coins on the table and grumbled about the price. The waitress approached without hesitation, gently explaining that the meal cost slightly more. But she offered to adjust the side dish to help him manage. The man reluctantly nodded and accepted. Her face did not show relief, annoyance, or any judgment. She simply did what needed to be done. It was then that he saw something he had forgotten existed. Selflessness. Later, the young man pushed past the billionaire, spilling his drink onto another table. He muttered angrily at the owner of the table, blaming him. The billionaire stayed silent, letting the young man continue. But the waitress rushed over quickly. "It was okay," she said gently. "Please don't worry." The young man glared, but moved away, not expecting anyone to speak for the man in tattered clothes. The billionaire watched her and felt his heart tighten. She did not know who he was, and yet she stood up for him, risking nothing but her own comfort. The restaurant continued to fill. Orders came fast. Some customers were rude, others demanding. The manager barked instructions, and the cooks worked quickly, moving like a wheeled machine. The waitress never raised her voice. She adjusted her tone for each person. For the elderly, she softened her words. For children, she smiled and joked lightly. For those who complained, she calmly explained. It was like she understood each person's world and cared, even a little. About their struggles, the billionaire could not take his eyes off her. Every time she passed, she managed a delicate balance between authority and compassion. A spilled plate, a broken glass, an angry customer, all handled with the same quiet dignity. He had seen leaders before, but they demanded respect with fear or money. This woman earned it naturally, without anyone even realizing. As the afternoon dragged on, a group of workers argued over a bill. Voices rose. The manager came running, ready to shout, but the waitress stepped between them and spoke softly. She suggested splitting the bill, gave a small discount, and reminded them politely of restaurant rules. The workers grumbled, but accepted. The tension disappeared. She walked away, brushing crumbs from her apron, moving to the next table. Nothing was ever too much for her. She was not perfect, but she carried a calm that made everything better. The billionaire's tea arrived again. He took a sip and felt warmth spread through his chest. He watched the restaurant as if seeing it for the first time. The hustle, the little kindnesses, the small acts of courage, it all added up to something beautiful. He realized that he had been missing this for so long. Power, wealth, influence, all of it could not buy this simplicity, this honesty, this human connection. Then it happened. A young boy tripped and knocked a tray of food onto the floor. The restaurant fell silent. The manager frowned, clearly frustrated. Customers muttered under their breath. But the waitress moved immediately. She cleaned up the mess, comforted the boy, and whispered something to him that made him smile again. She then made sure the food was replaced quickly. Not a single complaint left her lips. She did not seek praise or recognition. She just did the right thing. The billionaire felt a lump in his throat. He had been in boardrooms where deals fell apart and people cried over lost millions. But he had never seen anything as moving as what he witnessed here. Ordinary people, simple lives, and one woman who made it all feel safe. Hours passed. The restaurant emptied slowly. The last customers left, leaving the waitress to close tables and sweep the floor. The billionaire stayed seated, sipping his tea, unwilling to leave. He wanted to remember this moment forever. He wanted to study her, understand her, learn from her. As she brought out the last tray, she noticed him. She offered a tired smile. He returned it with a quiet nod. No words were exchanged, but he felt a connection, a bridge built between two worlds. One rich and powerful, the other simple and human. Yet for this moment, the divide did not exist. When he finally stood to leave, he felt different. Not in wealth, not in status, not in fame. Something deeper had shifted. A sense of hope, a feeling that humanity could still surprise him, even at his age, even after seeing so much greed, corruption, and false smiles. He left the restaurant quietly, slipping back into the streets unnoticed. The waitress watched him go, assuming he was just another tired man looking for a meal. She had no idea that her actions had already left a lasting mark on someone who could have anything he wanted. Her patience, her courage, and her kindness had made an impact stronger than any boardroom victory. Outside, he paused for a moment. The air felt fresher than yesterday. The city's sounds did not seem so harsh. He realized that he had come not for food, not for rest, but for something far more rare. He had come to witness real character, unspoiled by money or status, and he had found it in her. It was a gift, and he knew he would carry it with him forever. He walked away slowly, already planning to return. Not for himself, but to see the woman whose small actions left him speechless and reminded him that some treasures could never be bought. This was the true test of the world, and she had passed it effortlessly. The following day, he arrived once again. He had prepared himself to blend even further into the small restaurant. His worn jacket hung loosely, his shoes scuffed, his hat tilted low. No one paid him any special attention. To the world outside, he was invisible, just another man trying to make his way through a busy day. He chose a corner table, the same one he had occupied before. The chair squeaked under his weight. The room smelled of fried food, fresh bread, and the strong aroma of coffee and tea. The restaurant was alive with ordinary chaos. Children laughed while their parents argued quietly about the bill. Servers ran back and forth with plates and trays. The manager barked instructions, and the kitchen clattered in response. To him, this was a world he had almost forgotten existed. A world that money could never truly touch. The waitress approached. Her eyes, warm and attentive, scanned the table as if she had known he belonged there for some time. She smiled softly and asked if he wanted anything. He simply shook his head. He did not need food. He was there to observe, to learn, and to feel again. Soon the restaurant began to fill with a lunch crowd. Workers on their break, young couples, and older men and women, looking for a quick meal. The billionaire watched the interactions carefully. How the waitress handled complaints, how she calmed angry voices, and how she kept a sense of calm amidst the noise. There was a balance in her actions. A quiet authority that did not demand respect but earned it naturally. A situation arose that immediately drew his attention. A man arrived at the counter, visibly upset. He slammed a few coins on the counter and demanded service quickly. The manager rushed over, his voice sharp, ready to reprimand. But the waitress stepped forward first. She leaned slightly, speaking softly yet firmly. "Sir, please wait a moment. We will help you." The billionaire watched her closely. She did not smile falsely. She did not bow excessively. She simply acknowledged the man's frustration and promised he would be attended to promptly. The man, taken aback by her calm demeanor, softened slightly. The tension eased without any further conflict. The billionaire's eyes followed her every move. She was everywhere at once, serving customers, checking orders, and managing problems with care. A tray tipped accidentally near another table, but she caught it before it hit the ground. A spilled drink threatened to stain a customer's clothes, and she reacted immediately, offering napkins and reassurance. She was quick, thoughtful, and kind, but never patronizing. He wanted to test her further, to see if her actions were truly selfless. When another customer, young and impatient, started mocking him for his clothes, he did not respond. The young man sneered, calling him cheap and lazy, trying to humiliate him. The billionaire looked down at his tea, remaining quiet. He expected the usual reaction, a shrug, a refusal, or a dismissive comment from the waitress. Instead, she appeared at his side before he even had a chance to register discomfort. "It is okay," she said quietly, but firmly. "You are not at fault." Her words were simple, but powerful. They shifted the energy in the room. The young man, surprised that someone had defended him without judgment or ridicule, backed away. The manager had started to step in, but the waitress raised her hand, signaling calm. She handled the situation with ease, diffusing tension without confrontation. The billionaire's heart raced. This was not a performance. It was genuine concern for another human being. Hours passed and the restaurant grew busier. The lines were longer. The noise rose, but the waitress maintained her poise. She carried plates with precision, served meals with a smile, and handled complaints with patience. Her actions were consistent, not once faltering under pressure. Every small choice she made reflected her character, her values, her sense of humanity. At one point, a man accidentally knocked over a cup of tea, spilling it across the table. The room seemed to freeze. The manager approached with a frown, ready to scold. But the waitress moved immediately, wiping the spill, offering the customer a new cup, and reassuring him with a kind tone. There was no anger, no blame, just action and care. The billionaire felt a deep emotion he could not name. Gratitude? Perhaps it was a mix of both. He observed her throughout the afternoon. Each time she intervened, she did so without seeking recognition. Each time she comforted someone, it was because she believed it was the right thing to do. Her sense of duty was not imposed by rules or expectations. It was driven by her heart. He could feel the difference between her actions and the artificiality of the world he usually inhabited as the day wore on. A small crisis emerged. A family of 4 arrived, frustrated and tired. They had a long journey and were hungry. Their order was complex, and mistakes were made in the kitchen. The parents grew irritated, voices rising, and the children began to cry. The manager stepped in, his face tight with stress. The waitress calmly addressed each problem, fixing the meals, calming the parents, and gently soothing the children. She carried trays, wiped spills, adjusted chairs, and never lost patience. The billionaire watched, silent and amazed. He realized that her work required far more than physical effort. It required emotional strength, intelligence, and empathy. All exercised without complaint. Eventually, the restaurant quieted down. The last customers left, and the staff began cleaning and closing. The billionaire remained seated, reluctant to leave. He realized that he had come not only to observe, but to understand something he had long forgotten. The world of ordinary people, the resilience and humanity that exists beyond wealth, the quiet courage of someone who acts rightly without expectation of reward. He had witnessed it all today, and it had left a profound impact on him. The waitress noticed him as she cleared the last table. She smiled, tired but genuine, and offered a simple nod. No questions, no judgment, no assumptions. He nodded back, feeling a connection that transcended words. He was invisible to the world, yet somehow, she had seen him. When he finally stood to leave, he felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because he had experienced something pure, something authentic. Heavier because he realized how far removed he had been from this type of humanity for so long. Outside, the air felt fresher. The city sounds less harsh. He walked slowly, planning his next visit. Not for food, not for comfort, not for distraction, but to continue witnessing the character, integrity, and selflessness of someone whose small actions had left him speechless and changed his perspective forever. The next morning, he arrived at the small restaurant once again. His jacket was older, patched in places, his shoes worn thin. The cap on his head cast a shadow across his face, keeping him anonymous. To anyone walking past, he was just another man walking in for a simple meal. But inside, he carried anticipation. Today would be different. Today he would see more of the world that had remained hidden from him in the glitter of wealth. The restaurant smelled familiar, warm and comforting. The clatter of dishes, the chatter of customers, the occasional laughter and cries of children, all blended into the ordinary rhythm of life. He chose his usual corner table, the one closest to the entrance, and settled into the chair. The squeak of the old chair seemed to greet him like an old friend. The waitress arrived shortly, smiling softly as always. She had no idea who he was. Her calm eyes scanned him for the moment it mattered, but she treated him like any other customer. There was no judgment, no special attention, no assumptions about who he was or what he could afford. He admired this about her. It was rare, this ability to see people without labels, without the weight of expectation. The morning moved on slowly. Workers came in for breakfast, young couples chatted over tea, and a few regulars sat quietly with newspapers and coffee. The billionaire observed all of it, but his eyes always returned to the waitress. Her every movement was purposeful. She balanced trays with care, filled glasses without spilling, and moved from table to table with an energy that was tireless but graceful. It was during the late morning that he decided to test her further. He had been watching her handle difficult situations calmly, with kindness and intelligence. He wondered if her actions were genuine, or if she was simply polite out of habit. He looked around the room and saw an opportunity. A young man entered, clearly pretending to be casual, but with a sneer in his expression. He walked past the billionaire and bumped into him, spilling some tea onto his coat. The man mocked him loudly, making rude comments about his appearance and clothing. Normally, such a situation would have brought out impatience, defensiveness, or embarrassment. He said nothing. He simply wiped the tea quietly. Watching the young man expectantly, the waitress approached immediately, her pace quick but calm. She bent slightly, speaking softly but firmly. "It's okay," she said. "Please don't worry." The young man froze, surprised that someone had defended the man in tattered clothes without sarcasm, judgment, or fear. He looked around for support, but the room had quieted. The manager was about to intervene, but she raised her hand, signaling calm. She handled the situation perfectly, without drawing attention to herself or the conflict. It was effortless, yet powerful. The billionaire felt a strange warmth in his chest. Her action was small but significant. It was not an act of obedience, nor was it motivated by recognition or reward. She had defended someone she barely knew, simply because it was the right thing to do. He had never seen such courage, such integrity. In a world full of deals and contracts, where everything had a price, the rest of the morning passed in similar fashion. Customers came and went. Some were rude, others demanding, some confused, and some lost in their own world. The waitress handled each one with patience and kindness. She listened to complaints, offered solutions, comforted children, reassured worried parents, and guided frustrated workers. She never raised her voice unnecessarily, never showed anger or impatience, and never asked for praise. She was present, fully, with each person she helped. As the morning crowd thinned, an older woman accidentally dropped her handbag near the counter. The contents spilled across the floor. The manager began to speak sharply, preparing to scold her for carelessness. But the waitress moved immediately, crouching down, gathering the scattered items, and returning them to the woman with a gentle smile. "It's all right," she said. "Don't worry." The woman's eyes filled with gratitude. The manager relaxed slightly, recognizing that the situation had been handled well. The billionaire sat quietly, his hands wrapped around his tea, watching. The simple act, the gentle words, sincere smile, it moved him more than any grand gesture or lavish display of wealth ever could. This was true character, the kind that could not be bought or faked. It was after this that the unexpected happened. Outside the restaurant, a group of assistants arrived, speaking loudly into phones and calling his name. One by one, they opened the door, scanning the room. The billionaire realized that the secret of his presence had been discovered, but he did not panic. He simply watched, waiting for the right moment. The assistants spotted him at last and rushed over, a mix of urgency and concern in their voices. "Sir, we found you. Everything is ready. You need to come now." He shook his head. "Not yet." He looked around the restaurant one last time, taking in the ordinary chaos, the lives unfolding, and the woman whose small acts had changed the way he saw the world. He motioned for the assistants to wait and turned back to the waitress. He stood, removed his cap, and let his jacket fall open, revealing a glimpse of expensive clothing beneath. He spoke softly, his voice calm but carrying authority. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I am not who you think I am. I am wealthy beyond imagining. Everything you see outside, every building, every company, every deal, it belongs to me." The waitress blinked, confused. She looked around, unsure if he was joking. Her hands tightened around the tea tray she had been carrying. "I am the man you have been serving all week," he continued. "I wanted to see the world as it truly is, to see people as they truly are, without the influence of money." The room fell silent. The manager's mouth opened and closed, unsure of what to say. The assistants shifted nervously. Customers watched with curiosity, and the waitress, standing still, looked at him with eyes that reflected a mix of shock, disbelief, and something deeper recognition. She said nothing at first. She had been polite, she had done her duty, but now the truth crashed into her. This man, who had appeared poor and unremarkable, was one of the richest men in the country. She had served him without knowing, without judgment, without seeking reward. He smiled gently, not with pride, but with humility. "You do not know how much I have learned from you," he said. "From the way you treat people, from the courage you show, from the kindness you give freely. I wanted to see who you are, and I am speechless." Her hands trembled slightly, the tray nearly slipping. She took a deep breath and met his gaze. She said nothing, because no words could capture what had just happened. The billionaire continued, speaking softly so only she could hear. "You have reminded me what really matters. Money, power, all of it, pales in comparison to the courage and humanity you have shown. This world has taught me many lessons, but today, you have taught me the greatest one." The assistants, sensing the moment, stepped back. The manager looked stunned, unsure if this was a lesson or a display of arrogance. But the waitress understood. She had acted without expectation. She had been genuine, and now the truth had been revealed. The billionaire's gratitude was sincere, deep, and transformative. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. He placed it gently on the counter in front of her. "This is for you," he said. "Not because you served me, but because you deserve it. You have integrity, courage, and heart. This world needs more people like you." She looked at the envelope, hesitant, unsure if it was a gift or a trap. He smiled warmly. "It is not a gift to buy you. It is a recognition of who you are." The room remained quiet as he turned and left, allowing the assistants to follow. Outside, the city felt the same, noisy and chaotic. Yet he carried a sense of peace inside him. He had found something priceless, something beyond wealth, something that reminded him of why he had started his journey in the first place. The waitress stood in the empty restaurant, staring at the envelope. She felt the weight of the moment, the significance of the small choices she had made every day. She realized that her actions, though ordinary to her, had a profound impact. She had shown courage without expectation, kindness without recognition, and integrity without fear. For the billionaire, the day had changed everything. He had seen the world without the veil of money and status, and in doing so, he had discovered the true value of humanity. For the waitress's life had shifted as well. She had been seen, recognized, and honored not for wealth or status, but for her character. And for both of them, the encounter would be remembered forever. A quiet testament to the power of small, selfless acts. The day after revealing his true identity, the billionaire returned to the restaurant once more. Today was different from all previous days. He had not come to observe quietly or to test anyone. Today he had come with a purpose, one that had been forming in his mind ever since he had seen the courage, patience, and kindness of the waitress. The morning air was crisp, and the city buzzed faintly in the background. He entered the restaurant without disguise, wearing simple but clean clothes and carrying himself with a calm confidence. The bell above the door rang, and the few early customers glanced up, curious but polite. The waitress approached him, her eyes widening slightly in recognition, but she did not yet fully understand the importance of his presence. "Good morning," she said softly, still cautious but polite. "Good morning," he replied, his voice warm, and a small smile played at his lips. Today, he did not sit in the corner table. Instead, he went directly to the counter, where she often paused between tasks. He wanted to speak to her without distractions. Without the noise of other people or the clatter of plates, he began slowly, choosing his words carefully. "There is something I have been meaning to tell you," he said. "Something important. All this time you have shown me something that wealth, power, or status could never teach me. You have shown integrity, courage, and genuine humanity. I wanted to honor that today." The waitress looked at him, puzzled. Her hands rested lightly on the counter. She had served him without knowing who he was, treated him as any other person, and never expected recognition. Now he was here, acknowledging her, and she struggled to comprehend why. He reached into a small bag and pulled out several envelopes, each neatly labeled. These were not just financial gifts. They were opportunities, security, and recognition for the hard work and values she had demonstrated. He placed them gently in front of her. "Please understand," he said. "This is not a reward for serving me, but a recognition of who you are. You have faced challenges, defended those who could not defend themselves, and treated everyone with kindness. That is rare, and it deserves to be acknowledged." She picked up the first envelope cautiously, her fingers trembling slightly. She opened it and read the words inside. The letter explained that she would be given opportunities to further her education, financial support for her family, and a path to advance in life in ways she had only dreamed of. Her eyes widened further, and she looked at him again, searching his face for meaning. "Why are you doing this?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because it is the right thing to do," he replied simply. "Because you reminded me that there is more to life than wealth, more to success than power. It's because your actions, small though they may seem, have touched me in a way that nothing else ever has." For a moment, the restaurant seemed to stand still. The few customers who were present watched silently, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. The manager, who had once been harsh and impatient, looked on with surprise and confusion. The assistants now waiting outside could hardly believe the scene they were witnessing. The waitress, overwhelmed, could barely find words. She had never imagined that her simple acts of kindness, her everyday patience, and her dedication to her work would lead to this. She had done nothing extraordinary in her mind, yet the billionaire saw in her something priceless: authenticity. He continued speaking softly, his gaze steady. "Life has a way of showing us what truly matters," he said. "Money, power, influence. They can buy almost anything, but they cannot buy respect, integrity, or the kind of courage you have shown. You have given me a gift more valuable than any fortune." She felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of pride and humility. She realized that her simple acts, the way she had stood up for those who were weak, the way she had shown care without expectation, had made a difference in someone's life far greater than she could imagine. It was a lesson for both of them, a moment that transcended social status, wealth, and appearances. As the day progressed, he watched her continue her work, now with a quiet recognition from him that did not go unnoticed. Customers still arrived, bringing the usual bustle, the noise, and the occasional complaint. But the energy in the room was different now. There was a sense of respect, not fear, and a quiet appreciation for the humanity displayed by the waitress. He moved through the restaurant, greeting staff and customers subtly, but always returning his attention to her. He wanted her to understand that her actions mattered, that her character had the power to inspire and influence in ways she had never imagined. He wanted the lesson of this encounter to extend beyond recognition, to plant seeds of confidence and self-worth that she could carry throughout her life. After the morning rush ended, he asked her to sit with him for a few minutes. She hesitated, unsure if it was appropriate, but nodded slowly. They sat at a small table near the window, the sunlight warming the room softly. He spoke again, this time more personally. "I have traveled the world, met countless people, and experienced more than most could imagine," he said. "Yet in all of that, I have rarely seen someone act as you have acted, selflessly, without expectation, with courage and grace. It has changed the way I see everything." Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden, as she listened. She had worked hard, faced hardships, and often felt unnoticed. Now, the recognition was not just for her work, but for her heart, her spirit, her humanity. It was more than she could have imagined. He reached across the table, placing a hand lightly on hers. Not for control, not for dominance, but as a gesture of acknowledgement and respect. "You have given me hope," he said. "You have reminded me that there is goodness in the world, that courage and kindness can exist even in ordinary lives. And that is something I will never forget." The waitress, finally finding her voice, whispered a simple "thank you." It was insufficient, of course. Words never could capture the magnitude of the moment, yet in that simple exchange, a bond had been formed, one that transcended status, wealth, and expectation. Later, as he prepared to leave, he made one last promise. "I will make sure your future is safe," he said, "not just financially, but in every way that matters. Education, opportunity, growth. You will have choices, freedom, and security because you deserve it. But more importantly, you will always know that your character, your courage, and your kindness are what truly matter in this life, outside." The city roared with its usual clamor, but he felt a quiet peace within. For the billionaire, this encounter had been transformative. He had discovered the depth of humanity he had been missing. He had learned lessons that money could never teach. He had found a reminder of what it meant to live with integrity. The waitress, standing behind the counter, looked at the envelopes once more. She realized that her small, daily choices, her simple acts of courage and kindness, had been seen, valued, and honored. Life would change for her, certainly. Opportunities and security would come. But beyond that, she had left a mark on someone who had everything and yet had learned what truly mattered through her example. For both of them, the encounter had changed everything. One had discovered the priceless nature of humanity. The other had been recognized in a way she had never imagined. Their lives, though different, were forever intertwined by courage, kindness, and the simple truth that small acts of selflessness can change the world in ways no wealth ever could. As the restaurant returned to its usual rhythm, they both understood that the true reward was not in money or recognition, but in the profound lesson of seeing, respecting, and valuing humanity above all else. And in that quiet understanding, the world felt just a little brighter, just a little kinder, and infinitely more hopeful.